Hello book lovers and welcome back or welcome to Nakat's Bookish Cafe. Today we are here to go through my November TBR. Alright guys, I do want to point out I have a Halloween party tonight, hence why my makeup is a little bit different and I actually have painted nails. I have not suddenly gone goth, but I do think I want to work on perfecting the smoky eye because I do like the look. It's just I didn't do a good job of it because this was like my first time ever doing it, but good enough for a Halloween party. But I just wanted to let you know in case I'm looking very pale. That is on purpose. But that being said, it is November. We are going into my birthday month. I'm very excited. We have a few things going on this month. I have a little bit of traveling here at the beginning of the month, and obviously my birthday and Thanksgiving. That being said, I have decided that I can't play my TBR game. Emphasize on I don't think I can do it. I would love to, but I just have too many books that I need to finish this month before we get into December. December is when I play my TBR game alongside a bingo board, so I roll 12 times. And I am very behind on my challenge books. I need to read 3 of them this month. So I decided that November is kind of going to be the month where I read the books that I need to go ahead and finish by the end of the year. I would also like to read a couple of nonfiction books this month since it's nonfiction November. So I apologize that we're not playing the game this month. I know we skipped it just a couple months ago, but I think that this is really proving to me that next year it's gonna be a lot easier for me to play my game only every other month, because I've noticed that I experience a lot of what I call bookish traffic jams, where I keep moving books to the next month and then the next month, and the pile of books that I want to or need to read that I'm just not getting to continuously grows. And not playing my TBR game every month will allow me to do a little bit more mood reading or specifically choose books that I need to read, things like that. So hopefully next year I will be able to stay on top of my reading a little bit better than I have this year. But yes, unfortunately this month we will not be playing my TBR game, but you will get 12 instead of 5 rolls next month. So hopefully that makes up for it. That being said, in this TBR, we're going to go over the challenge books that I need to read. That includes selecting my last challenge book of the year. We're going to go through a few books that I would really like to get to, whether because they're on a seasonal TBR, a continuation of a series, or the last book on my 2024 bingo board that I still need to get to. And then I'm going to talk about the non-fictions that I want to get to. One of them isn't here yet. I just ordered it. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then I actually am going to need your help choosing the second nonfiction that I will be focusing on this month. I have 3 that are on my shelf that I'm really excited about, and I literally was sitting there unable to choose, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave it to the masses. So I will talk through those 3 books, and then you can vote down in the comments which ones you would like me to prioritize this month. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start with the challenge books, and then we'll get into all the other books I would like to read. All right, so first off, we have the 2 books from, are these from September and October? I don't even remember which months these are from, but they are still sitting here unread. I will say that the City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty, I have gone ahead and started. I got 112 pages in. I'm in the middle of a chapter because this was the book I was reading when I got really sick. I got a really bad cold, and that really sent me into a bad reading slump. My brain was like, reading, that's not something we're gonna do for the next week. So this is a book that I started. I was really enjoying it, enjoying the characters, enjoying the writing, enjoying the plot. We are following a young woman who is kind of a con artist and a thief, and she has a few kind of magical abilities, I guess you could say. One of them involves her ability to see other people's illnesses, and the other one is she has an affinity for languages, and this includes a language that she has never heard anyone else speak. And one day she's doing one of her kind of cons where she is pretending to do a ritual where she summons a warrior to help remove a demon from someone else, and she decides to add a little pizzazz by using this language that only she knows. And unfortunately, that seems to be the language of the jinn, and so she summons an actual jinn, and this gains the attention of the Ifrit as well. And so this jinn decides that the best way for her to survive is to go to Daevabad, because the Ifrit cannot enter there, and they are interested in killing her because she may be the final descendant of a very powerful group of jinn with healing abilities that the Ifrit have wiped out essentially, and so they want to finish that job by finishing her. On top of that, we are also following the son of the leader of Daevabad, and he seems to be invested in helping those, and I'm forgetting what they were called, but they're essentially like half jinn, half human, and they are seen as lesser beings, but he doesn't really view them as such, and he doesn't approve of their treatment. And so he like helps finance some of the, I don't really want to call them rebellions, but they're organizations that protect those half jinn from their oppressors essentially. So there was definitely interesting things going on here, and I'm excited to get back to it. On the other hand, we have a book that I have been honestly kind of avoiding like the plague. I am a little worried that the more I think about this book, the less I think I'm going to like it. So I'm definitely getting more and more reluctant to pick it up, but we're definitely gonna go ahead and give it a try, and that is Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is a well-beloved story that is kind of a historical fantasy, very light on the fantasy from what I remember. We are following a young man who was brought from China to be a translator for the British Empire, and he and the other translators start to kind of realize that these translations are hurting their homelands, and I don't really know what they're gonna do about it or anything like that. On top of that, I believe there's a magic system revolving around silver. I am a little worried after hearing some reviews that this will be very much like colonialism is bad for dummies. So I'm hoping that it's not like too in your face just because I already know colonialism is bad, so I don't need someone to like spell it out for me, especially not over the course of like 500 pages. But we are going to go ahead and give it a try this month for sure. All right, guys, we don't really need to use the cup, but just for tradition's sakes, we are going to go ahead and select our final little piece of paper. Do you guys know which book is still left after all of these months? It is Just by Looking at Him by Ryan O'Connell. Luckily, this book came in to the library yesterday, so I was able to snatch it up because I knew I would be reading it this month. And luckily, it is also a shorty. This is a challenge book that I selected because of the topic rather than because of its length. So this book follows a TV writer, a queer TV writer who has cerebral palsy, and I believe that the author himself is also queer and disabled, so it is own voices. Essentially, our character's life on the surface looks relatively good. You know, he has a supportive boyfriend, he gets paid a lot of money, maybe even more than he deserves at his job, but he feels like he is being forced to be grateful for the life that he has because it's good for a disabled person. And so he wants to have a life that is good by his able-bodied friends. And he one day hears his boss talking about some crazy night that he had with a sex worker. And so our character decides to start seeing a sex worker, and this kind of turns into an obsession, and he starts to realize that this sex worker is another form of escapism, just like his drinking previously had been, and his life kind of spirals a bit out of control, and he needs to find a way to redeem himself. We are definitely not going to be following the most likable character. We're definitely going to be following someone who is on their path to self-destruction. That is something I am nervous about, especially since cheating is going to be a big aspect of the story. Not my favorite thing to talk about, but I do think that this is going to be a very emotional and impactful story. I myself am obviously not a queer man, but I do know, and I have heard, I don't know how much it's improved over the years. However, I do know that when it comes to physiques within the gay community, they can be rather high with their standards of that. So I can definitely see how a disabled man, a man with a disabled body within that community could definitely struggle. So I'm hoping that the author comments on that a little bit throughout the story. I also do like a redemption arc. It's always kind of great to watch people get their shit together. So I have a feeling that's what the story is about. It's definitely going to be a bit of a tough read, but I am very excited to get to it. All right, so let's get into the 3 other books that I would like to try to prioritize outside of my challenge books and my non-fiction books. The first one is going to be a carryover from my October TBR, because my October TBR kind of crashed and burned. I was very slumpy at the beginning of the month. It took me 7 days to finish my first book, and that book was under 300 pages, just to give you an idea of how little I was reading. And then obviously I got sick and ended up reading very little during that week, and then had like 3 whole days where I didn't even touch a book. So October was a bit of a wash, to be honest. You'll see that in my October wrap up. But I will be carrying over A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. This is the final book that I put on my 2024 bingo board. That was a bingo board that had a lot of my goals, as well as 6 specific books that I wanted to get to this year. This is the only one I have left. And this is the beginning of a trilogy by an author that I have really enjoyed in the past, so I'm really excited to get to it. It is a magical school setting. We are following a young woman who is attending here, and her magical abilities seem to be on the darker side. She's personally not interested in being a villain, but her magical abilities seem to be pulling her in that direction. And so she kind of self-isolates, and a lot of other students seem to try to avoid her because of this. And that all changes when a life or death situation brings her closer with this other boy at the school. So this is a school where students can perfect their magical abilities, because out in the real world there are monsters that are attracted to magic, which makes young people very vulnerable because they have magic, but they don't have the ability to use it properly to protect themselves. So they go to the school that is protected by a magical barrier, and they can kind of learn how to use their magic. I don't believe there's any sort of teachers or anything there. The only problem is that the monsters know they're all there, and so they're all just waiting outside of this border. And the kind of final test of the school graduation, I guess you can say, is actually leaving the school alive, which is why it's in our character's best interest to actually start forming some alliances. So I am very excited. I've heard mixed things about this book, but I have heard primarily good things. So I am very excited to finally be getting to it. Up next, I would like to read the final book on my fall TBR. I don't think I've ever actually read every book in a seasonal TBR within like the actual season. So it would be really great if I could do that. And that is going to be the Luminous Dead by Caitlin Starling. This is a sci-fi horror kind of in an isolated setting. We seem to be following a character who has lied on their resume, and they have been given the opportunity to go to this planet to kind of explore mapping mineral deposits. So that is kind of what she is doing here, making sure probably that it's safe for other people to come. And it's only her and the person that's in her headset kind of guiding her through it. And then suddenly it seems that this person in her headset knows who she is and the lies that she has told, which definitely puts her in a very precarious situation. So I am very excited to get into this. I really do enjoy sci-fi horror, and this has been at the top of my list for a while, so I definitely want to go ahead and sneak it in if I can. The final book is going to be a book that I wasn't initially going to put on my TBR, but then my wonderful subscriber Lon went ahead and sent me an early birthday gift of 4 books. So thank you, Lon. You always are so supportive of my channel. I really do appreciate everything that you do and all the comments and support that you have provided me over the months that you have followed me. So thank you. And they gave me the volume 11 of Criminal Intentions Crescendo by Cole McCade, and I can just not pick up a book by Cole McCade if I have it in my grubby little hands. I am so excited. I actually thought this was the final book in the series, but it seems like there's a part 1 and part 2 to the finale, which Lon also gave me. So I have those. Who knows? Maybe I'll read this and I'll be like, I guess I just have to read the finale, but hopefully not, because I need to be responsible and finish these other books. But I am definitely going to try and squeeze this on. This is, of course, if you're new here, a series that follows Malcolm and Son Jay, and they are homicide detectives for the Baltimore Police Department. Every book in this series has been kind of following a different murder or mystery that they need to solve, and there has also been an overarching plot of their relationship, as well as a dark character from Son Jay's past. So I am very interested to see how this goes. I have a feeling that that character who has been kind of creeping around in the background is going to make his very grand entrance. He definitely kind of poked his head in a few times in the last book, so I am ready to see him get his butt kicked, because that is hopefully what happens, because that guy needs to leave. He needs to leave my boys alone. So thank you again, Lon. I will definitely be trying to get to this because I am a Cole McCade fangirl. 100%. Yeah. All right, guys, let's get into the nonfiction portion of this. So the one that I have ordered that's not here yet is Atomic Habits. I'm sure you've heard of this story. It is very popular. A lot of people highly praise it. My therapist has kind of suggested it to me because I keep telling her that I overwhelm myself by setting these huge big goals for myself, and then I get overwhelmed and then I don't do anything to achieve any of those goals, because I'm just like, let's just pretend like we don't need to do any of those life-changing things. And she's like, I don't want you to focus on goals. I want you to focus on changing habits that will eventually lead you towards accomplishing those goals. So I have definitely put off reading this book because I keep saying I'm not a self-help book girly, but at the end of the day, this book just seems to help so many people. So I definitely want to go ahead and give it a try. I will probably not finish it this month. This is definitely one of those books that I will be reading relatively slowly. It'll be more of like a learning experience for me than like a reading enjoyment situation, but I will be hopefully starting that journey this month. All right, guys, and finally, the book that I need your help with. So pay close attention to what these books are about, and if you would be interested in hearing my thoughts on them. I am not a huge nonfiction reader, let alone a nonfiction reviewer, so they're not going to be like the most in-depth mind-blowing reviews or anything, but if you have an interest in any of these books, definitely let me know down below and I will see about prioritizing that. So again, I will go through these 3 books, read their synopses, and then vote down below on which one you would like me to read. All right, so book number 1 is going to be The 100 Years of War on Palestine, A History of Settler Colonialism and Resistance, 1917 to 2017 by Rashid Khalidi. So this is a well-known book, and it was definitely going around when the Israeli government decided to respond to Hamas's attack on their people. Obviously, they have gone a little far with that and definitely dipped into the territory of genocide. And I would like to know a little bit more about the history of Israel and Palestine, just because it is something that has been going on for like what, 75 years, or it's been going on for a long time. It didn't just start with this current war. So the back of this says, in 1899, Yusuf Daya al-Khalidi, former mayor of Jerusalem, alarmed by Zionist call to create a Jewish national home in Palestine, wrote a letter aimed at Theodore Herzl. A country had an indigenous people who would not easily accept their own displacement. He warned of the perils ahead, ending his note, "In the name of God, let Palestine be left alone." Thus, Rashid Khalidi al-Khalidi's great-great-nephew begins the sweeping history, the first general account of the conflict told from an explicitly Palestinian perspective. Accepted interpretations of the confrontation tend, at best, to describe a tragic clash between 2 people with claims to the same land. Drawing on archival materials and the accounts of generations of family members, judges, scholars, diplomats, and journalists, the 100-Year War on Palestine instead shows that this war has always been colonial in nature, waged against the native population, first by the Zionist movement and then by Israel, but backed by Britain and the United States, the great powers of the age. Neither chronicle of victimization nor a whitewash of mistakes made by Palestine leaders, the 100-Year War on Palestine offers both a compelling family history and an original, illuminating view of the Middle East's most intractable conflict. So definitely a little overdue on reading this, but we will see if you want me to read it this month. Up next, we have The Great Displacement, Climate Change, and the Next American Migration by Jake Biddle. This is a book that I want to say I got earlier this year, or was it late last year, during Barnes & Noble's 50% off sale. I noticed that it was relatively highly rated, and it was definitely something I was intrigued by. We often talk about people migrating to the United States, but what about migrations within the states, especially here in hurricane season? We definitely have seen a lot of people who live in areas that are very destructive and dangerous to live in. So the synopsis is, even as climate change dominates the headlines, many of us still think about it in future tense. We imagine that as global warming gets worse over the coming decades, millions of people will scatter around the world, fleeing famine and rising seas. What we often don't realize is that the consequences of climate change are already visible right here in the United States. In communities across the country, climate disasters are pushing thousands of people away from their homes. From the sinking islands of the Florida Keys to the fire-scorched forests of California to the soaked watersheds of inland North Carolina, people all around us are moving. They are young couples reeling from bankruptcy after coastal flooding in Virginia, farmers contemplating the loss of family legacies in Arizona, and historically Black and Indigenous communities being washed away in North Carolina and Louisiana. In the last few decades, the federal government has moved tens of thousands of families away from flood zones, and tens of thousands have moved of their own accord in the aftermath of natural disasters. The cost of these disasters will soon upend our insurance and housing markets, pricing people out of risky areas. Over the next 50 years, millions of Americans will be caught up in the churn of displacement, forced inland and northward in what will be the largest migration in our country's history. So that, I feel, is definitely a very relevant story. Honestly, all 3 of these books are super relevant, but I was very excited to get my hands on this and would love to read it this month if you would like it as well. The third book on here is definitely the one that I would say is one of the topics that would be the most difficult to read about. It's definitely a very tough topic. I will say that I did a little bit of research before buying this. It was very important to me that this author was presenting a very fair argument about how to handle this situation, that this is not a book that is anti-Muslim, Islamophobic, and that it is not anti-immigration, and that does not seem to be the case. Obviously, I could verify that a bit more after reading the book myself, but I just want to point that out because this topic is a bit touchy. So just want to point out that I am confident in this author's ability to fairly handle this very traumatic topic. So that is going to be Prey, Immigration, Islam, and the Erosion of Women's Right by Ayaan Hirsi Ali. So in Prey, Ayaan Hirsi Ali, the best-selling author of Infidel, presents startling statistics, criminal cases, and personal testimony. Among these facts, in 2014, sexual violence in Western Europe surged following a period of stability. In 2018, in Germany, offenses against sexual self-determination rose 36% from their 2014 rate. Nearly 2/5 of the suspects were non-German. In Australia, in 2017, asylum seekers were suspected in 11% of all reported rapes and sexual harassment cases, despite making up less than 1% of the total population. This violence isn't a figment of alt-right propaganda. Hirsi Ali insists, even if neo-Nazis exaggerate it. It's a real problem that Europe and the world cannot continue to ignore. She explains why so many young Muslim men who arrive in Europe engage in sexual harassment and violence, tracing the roots of sexual violence in the Muslim world from institutionalized polygamy to the lack of legal and religious protection of women. A refugee herself, Hirsi Ali is not against immigration. As a child in Somalia, she suffered female genital mutilation. As a young girl in Saudi Arabia, she was made to feel acutely aware of her own vulnerabilities. Immigration, she argues, requires integration and assimilation. She wants Europeans to reform their broken system and for Americans to learn from European mistakes. If this doesn't happen, the calls to exclude new Muslim immigrants from West countries will only grow louder. Deeply researched and featuring fresh and often shocking revelations, Prey uncovers a sexual assault and harassment crisis in Europe that is turning the clock on women's rights much further back than the Me Too movement is advancing it. So as you can tell, this book is saying that due to increased immigration of Muslim men, primarily to Western countries, women are experiencing higher rates of sexual assault, which, as the synopsis mentioned, is something that the far right loves to use as an excuse to not allow immigrants into your country at all. I'm hoping to learn about this topic because I think it's very important. I think it's definitely something that is happening, but I do think that we need to find a solution that isn't drenched in like Islamophobia or racism. So I'm hoping that this will be a very insightful story, and if you would like to learn more about this topic, either pick up the book or also vote for it down below in the comments. All right, guys, again, here are the 3 books that you could vote for. I am very excited for all the 3 of these. I would happily pick any of them up, and I will definitely try to get to those that are not selected sometime in 2025. I was definitely slacking on my nonfiction reading this month, or not just this month, this year in general. So I would love to hear your thoughts. If you have read any of these and highly recommend them, I would love that as well. All right, guys, so here are the books that I need to go ahead and get to, and then on top of this will be whatever nonfiction book you select for me, as well as Atomic Habits. So there's 2 additional books here. So we got a couple chonkers that we definitely need to fight our way through. I don't want to say I'm optimistic. My reading has definitely not fully recovered from the slump, but these are all books that I'm relatively interested in. So hopefully I do get to them, because I have a feeling that if I don't get to them this month, I'm kind of screwed, because December is definitely not going to be the month where I can squeeze in any additional reading outside of my TBR. So there's that. All right, guys, so that is my November TBR. Again, sorry that we were not able to do my TBR game, but after seeing all those books that I need to get to, I'm sure you understand. And like I said, next month you will be seeing my game again, and we will be doing lots and lots of rolls. I'm very excited for that. I would love to know what kind of books you guys are wanting to read here in November. Are you going to be taking part in nonfiction November? Are you scrambling to, you know, finish reading all those books that you said you would read at the beginning of the year? As always, guys, thank you so much for your support by watching my channel, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!